Now, I know the term biopic seems to be a rather dismissed genre of film nowadays, and for a relatively good reason. Whenever people think of said genre, they tend to think of the formulated ones, where the underdog grows into a famous celebrity, they let the fame get to their head, and then they soon fall from grace. Admittedly, those biopics can definitely leave a sour taste in one's mouth. But what about a biopic that does something completely different within its narrative and even style? Well, that's where today's film comes in. American Splendor is a biographical dramedy based on the American Splendor comics by Harvey Pekar and a plethora of other artists, and Our Cancer Year by Pekar and Joyce Brabiner. Although the film does focus on the eccentric life of underground comic book writer Harvey Pekar, the movie's structure is divided into two different aesthetics. One is Harvey's life from the 1970s to the 1990s, where he's portrayed by actor Paul Giamatti, and the other is a documentary-style interview of the real Pekar detailing his past, and even sarcastically commenting on what Giamatti and the other actors are doing portraying him and the people he knew.
Here's our man. Yeah, all right. Here's me. The guy playing me anyway. Though he don't look nothing like me, but whatever.
Throughout the romanticized aesthetic, some of Pekar's musings are represented through his already existing comics, many of which are utilized with the filmmaking technique called montage. This in turn leaves the viewer imagining what the real Harvey Pekar sees, a cinematic reflection of his work that says ordinary life is the unusual within the usual. When utilizing this technique, directors Robert Pulcini and Sherry Springer Bergman cleverly display the montage as a showcase of what comes around Harvey Pekar, or at least Giamatti's Pekar.
I don't know. I guess she's about average.
Average? Hey, man. Average is dumb.
So what is she?
Hey, man. Average is dumb.
Upon analyzing these moments, it's made clear how depressingly gloomy the man's life really is, yet he manages to cope with it by writing his daily experiences in comics. Of course, these comics will later be illustrated by other cartoonists, including Pekar's friend Robert Crumb, yes, the Robert Crumb, but the ideas are strictly from his cynical point of view on the world. Pekar's goal was to make comics that spoke to him as opposed to streamlined superhero stories, which is all described by his everyday actions that either make or break the poor curmudgeon. When we're looking at Pekar's musings, which end up being inspiration for his own work, it becomes clear how Pulcini and Bergman have mirrored their subject by showing his disappointing state of being through a series of vignettes, very similar to the never-ending unpredictabilities that the mundane can inflict on somebody. Now, the actions themselves are simple yet accurately specific to what the comics are telling us about Harvey's grim life in Cleveland, Ohio. They all reflect his unorthodox working-class pessimism. These escapades help contrast Pekar's content from the more conventional kiddie stuff. In addition, by having other cartoonists turn his words into graphic images, the transitions from real life into the comics are illusions from Pekar's own stream of consciousness, which are perfectly captured by Giamatti's specific body gestures and facial expressions. It's almost as if the filmmakers are intentionally highlighting the more specific details of Pekar's dreary existence to get across that the unfortunate implications the guy faces overshadow his growing stardom. Despite creating these uniquely spoken comics, Pekar had worked as a hospital file clerk all the way up to his retirement. Granted, he did capture some of the bizarre people and experiences into his work, such as his socially awkward colleague Toby Radloff and his unrelenting boss Mr. Boats, but they were still no more than fragments of his depressing working-class status.
I'm still a file clerk. I have always been a file clerk,
enough,
and it's no thanks to you or to your goddamn pathetic audience, man.
Okay!
This is why he wrote about what he knew, to unleash his own personal frustrations on society in comic form, a medium people can relate to by putting themselves into the subject's feet. Anyone can resonate with the life of a crabby person, but it takes a special visual representation to let one's inner perception truly gravitate to what they're viewing. Pekar's life was as graphically grim as a comic book, hence the intentional irony in the title American Splendor. As for how the montage reflects the real Harvey Pekar, Bergman plays an interviewer who asks him if he listens to numerous people to gain inspiration.
Yeah, I listen. I fall asleep on people too, but I listen some.
With that in mind, it's made clear that Pekar built his content off the world around him, like many artists have done.
Every day's a brand new deal, right? Just keep on working and something's bound to turn up.
That line right there perfectly sums up the continuous, albeit smooth flow of oddities that enter the man's life. Considering that the montage subtly indicates that the American Splendor comics became underground icons throughout the country, it should be no surprise that Picar's existence took a turn for the better, all thanks to a little hobby in addition to a steady paid day job. In addition to how the montage connects to the overall life of Harvey Picar, it also fits within how the film is structured, like a comic book. While there are plenty of moments where Pulcini and Bergman execute specific scenes with panels and speech bubbles, the montage integrates animated comic page turns to keep the pacing smooth, courtesy of animators John Kuramoto and Gary Lieb. In the film's DVD commentary, Bergman stated that Kuramoto and Lieb went as far as to add in little curls to the turns to really give off the impression that said transitions felt like a page turning. In a way, they played with the audience's suspension of disbelief so they could theoretically turn each page of Picar's life one at a time. Finally, the last notable detail that makes the montage sequence stand out is how it works both as a film technique and a potential comic transition. As Scott McCloud once stated, while film makes use of audiences' imaginations for occasional effects, comics must use it far more often. Part of the appeal of montage is that it allows the film's audience a chance to interpret what is happening on screen through visual actions instead of spoken dialogue. However, if it were to be shown in the form of a graphic novel, not only would the images juxtapose one another through space, but it would give more time to let the viewer understand it in their own pace. In doing this, Pulcini and Bergman have represented an unprofessional comic writer's life into what he saw it as endless, albeit unforeseeable vignettes. So in the end, what this montage does for the legacy of Harvey Picar is reflect on both his work and the theme of mundane livelihood being quite complex towards those who deal with it. Whatever circumstances come around you day by day are just additions to the standard state of existence you've been assigned to. The best way to make something out of such a simple life is to express it creatively, and that's just what Picar did when conceiving his ideas for his beloved comic series, all with collaborative help from people who could actually draw them. Montage does for daily escapades in film the same that panel transitions do for comics, and the brilliant talents of Pulcini, Bergman, and especially Kuramoto and Lieb executed this method to make their biopic feel as if it were a massive volume collection of their subject's work.
Who are these people? Where do they come from? What do they do?